Welcome to episode 27 of season 5 of Whole Lot of Wolves. I'm Joshua Buckley with my co-host Paul LePage.
Hello.
Joining us again from Baltimore on the socials, Danny Paletti.
Hello.
And we have a new guest. We have added somebody in the transfer window, Paul. It is Ray Googe from Minnesota Wolves. How's it going, Ray?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we always have to ask a few questions when a guest is on for the first time. So tell us, how did you become a Wolves fan?
Yeah. This is the promotion season, the last promotion season. So was it 2018-19? Yeah. 2018-19. I was living in Virginia at the time, where I'm from. And some friends invited me to, there's a Liverpool bar there. They just invited me because they're Liverpool fans and they go all the time. And I just decided I would go. I kind of like soccer growing up, but I just happened to go that day, and they happened to be playing Wolves. And me and another guy's been on this podcast. Shout out to Mike Shad, wherever you are. Decided to root for the other team, and decided to root for Wolves, and it just got out of hand. It's just snowballed into me being all in. It's like, this is my primary team now, and it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. So you're a new fan, like a lot of us. So tell me who your favorite Wolves player is all time.
That's hard.
Why is it Adama Traore?
He's on the short list.
I knew it.
I mean, I'm big fans of y'all, by the way. Big fan of the pod. And I always laugh because I played with Adama on FIFA 2. And it's just, of course, it's awesome. But outside of him, I mean, there are a lot of people from that, from those earlier years. But because we share a birthday, I'm going with Romain Saiss.
Ooh, I don't think we've had a Roman one, Danny. I like that. That's a good one. And how about now? Who's your favorite player on the current team? Oh man, that looks a horror right there.
No, I mean, I'm such a homer, man. I love everybody, but I have a sneaky suspicion it's gonna be Marshall Monetsi pretty soon. I really enjoyed watching him play. Yeah, but
I may not like this pod after tonight.
That's fine. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to look past Cunha because of what he means to the team. It's hard to look past the talisman. So it's cheap, but I'm probably gonna say him for right now.
And what is your favorite match? Is it that Liverpool Wolves match?
No. I mean, it did get me in. It did get me in the door. We lost 2-0, and that was not fun. But I had so much fun rooting against the folks. This is going to be weird, probably, but because it's the only time I've seen them live, I guess it has to be the Annapolis match against Crystal Palace preseason. So it's just different. If there was any doubt in my mind how I felt about this team, it's all out the window now.
Yeah, that was such a cool experience. You were sitting by us, weren't you?
Yeah, I was nearby.
Yeah.
So the Wolves kind of elbowed in a place.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty exciting. So, well, it's interesting. Your first match that you became a Wolves fan was against Liverpool, because that's who Wolves were playing on Sunday. It was a 2-1 defeat, Paul. But really a tale of two halves, and Wolves were kind of unlucky not to get a point out of this.
You're right. I think just looking back, reflecting solely on that second half performance and taking everything else away, you can be really proud of them. And I think when you go away to Anfield, league leaders, and towards the end of the game, either approaching stoppage time or it's stoppage time, and it's them defending the ball in the corner flag to try and hold on. I think it gives you some idea of the pressure that we put them under. And it's always one of those that, okay, you play well and lose against a good team. Can you take that on, play at a similar level against opponents more towards where you are on the table, and beat them and get that boost that way up the standings, hopefully. But I think they can take enough from yesterday that if they probably don't have to play that well in the second half against some teams in and around us to come away from an away fixture either with a point or a win. That they did that well in the second half.
Well, the first goal Danny Wolves gave up, it was just kind of, it seemed like Luis Diaz was in the right place at the right time almost.
Yeah, it's kind of a calamity of errors. I think starting out with the fact that arguably he fouled Agbadou in the build-up, which I think is another one where if it was a reverse scenario, especially you think about the times that Cunha has muscled a center back off the ball and then gets called for a foul. It's kind of disappointing because I think we know that never would get called the other way. So that sort of got missed. I saw Dermot Gallagher saying that it's, something to do with the size disparity between them or whatever nonsense he was talking about. It just doesn't matter. He's pushing him in the back. But then, again, after that, like you just kind of have a catalog of kind of unfortunate events with sort of culminating with Toti sort of stabbing at the ball, and it just happens to fall perfectly for him. And almost that goal is like almost like João Gomez's goal at Blackburn, where it just kind of like trickles in slow motion. Maybe it comes off his hip or something. I don't know, but it just felt so disappointing because I know we're going to talk about the refereeing that, after all that had gone on, and it just felt like they'd given them every single chance to get in a good position. And then it felt so like on point for it to be a goal like that, where I'm not saying that they don't deserve it, but it's just kind of like a weird, fortunate goal for them. There are plenty of players in the buildup who on Wolves who should have done better, but in the end, it ends up feeling like I felt very hard done by in that moment because it just felt like such a weird goal to give up. And after watching for however long it had been, with Simon Hooper giving them every possible chance, it was a bitter pill to swallow.
That goal is kind of like in Family Guy whenever Peter hits Cleveland's house with something and Cleveland's in the tub and it's like scrolling down. He goes, no. That's how I kind of felt with the goal. So let's talk about that officiating. Wolves have been on the bad side of some official performances. That may have been one of the most appalling halves of sports officiating I have ever seen. Ray, I mean, what were your thoughts as you were watching? This is my favorite quote that I saw on Twitter. It said, Simon Hooper has booked more Wolves players for being fouled than Liverpool players for committing them.
Yeah.
And that's a true statement.
Yeah. I'm such a I tend to be toward the center of things. I can see both sides. It was just, even I couldn't make sense of what they were letting fly. We were just getting dragged all over the place, fouls. I feel like I've never seen so many fouls. It was a really, I don't know. It was just frustrating. And, for the people who, might think that the fix is in or, that sort of thing. It's it just adds fuel to the fire. It's I don't know how you do that. I don't know how the officials can look at that half and think that's fine. This is reflective of good sport. It was really upsetting
if there was anything to show that home team bias, big occasion for like the league leaders, it was those tactical fouls that they get away with because it's at Anfield, it's they're up against a lower team. It's that dark art that they'll get away with it, so they keep on doing it. Now, if you role reverse that and it's us trying to stop them on the counter at Anfield, guess what's happening?
Instantly.
Every single time. It's exactly that. I'm little like Ray. I like to see it as equally as possible. I just want for fairness, and it was blatantly obvious yesterday across a whole bunch of decisions that was refereed in the home team's favour, and there's nothing you can do with a bunch of those decisions, challenges, fouls not given, yellow cards not given, to say that it was anything else. But
I think it was really frustrating too, listening to the commentators, because they're like, "Oh, well, Wolves haven't really built up much of an offensive or counterattack." Well, I mean, that's what happens when you're getting fouled every damn time that you have a chance to break. And then, Danny, that's what should have been the second yellow on Kanade was really the icing on the cake there.
Yeah, that was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, first of all, we should count ourselves lucky because I understand that for the UK viewers, one of the commentators was Jamie Carragher, and he was giving every possible excuse for the calls to be going the way that they already were, and it was pretty insufferable. As it was, we just had a couple people who were very willing to see the more generous side of things. But yeah, like you guys said, I try not to get myself riled up over referee decisions anymore, partly just out of a survival instinct. It's too stressful otherwise as a Wolves fan, but this one was actually making me yell at my screen for the first time in a while. It's just, how did we go from, that game against Arsenal at Molineux, where you have the sending off, which was so controversial. And part of the reason of that was, it being on the break and then a high challenge. And, maybe that's an orange card, maybe it's only a yellow, but then we go to this scenario where everything on the break, they're just letting slide completely. And we all know why, but anyway, I'll go back to the question that you asked me, which is that, yeah, the Konate one is patently ridiculous. I cannot believe that anyone defends it. And there have been plenty who have defended it on national media sources that they're both challenging for a header, so to speak, but he's never getting there. Never. Cunha is getting to that ball first every single time. He completely lays him out. It's the kind of foul that you do just to let the player know you're there, but you don't do it when you're already on a yellow. It was a completely boneheaded choice that he made that he should have seen yellow for. And another thing I cannot believe, I'm really going to go down a rant here, but I cannot believe people were making excuses for they're bringing off Konate because they feel like this game is pretty much sewn up. And, that they can start rotating. I was like, Slot even admitted it afterwards. They knew that he was walking a tightrope. And it's because the guy should have had 3 yellow cards in the first half and had only seen 1. It was a ridiculous half of football to watch. Just absolute insanity.
Paul, is there anybody really in England that grows up without having to pick a club and have some sort of bias towards that club?
I think the thing about the UK England is the concentration. So you're gonna grow up and you're gonna have teams in and around you in your local community and so forth. It's not like you could be living in America in a state that hasn't got an NFL team yet, and you become a professional ref like that. So there's always going to be an element like that, just based on the geography. And it sounds like they're trying to do the best to mitigate it, and certain refs won't ref certain teams because they're close by and everything. But like just yesterday and those types of elements, to me, it just goes to show an overall lack of professionalism. Like, these should be the creme de la creme. It should be like a standard of officiating, that they're professional. It's the full-time job, and they're the best that can be. And 90% of the time, these decisions are correct and they get it spot on. What pisses me off is you get characters like that dickhead yesterday who blatantly looks out of shape. He's huffing, he's puffing, he's got a beer belly going on. You know, I'm no oil painting, I'm no model, but I think if that was my job, I'd make sure that I was in the tip-top condition and I look the part, and it could follow like that, because it's little incremental things that you start to take account of when it comes to things like that. And like, you've got questionable decisions, you've got questionable physical conditioning. You got David Coote, who went for years snorting so much Charlie that, you know, he could have run a small economy off his drug habit. You know, this stuff goes on, and that's what gets me, is we don't know the underbelly of all of this officiating. We really don't. It's certainly way from any type of like gold standard of professionalism, just based on the decisions and everything we see week in, week out. And it's not just us.
I feel like the only solution, Ray, if you really want to fix it, would be to use non-English referees. That's never going to happen, though.
It feels like the level of like excitement and like investment that people have in European football, obviously EPL is like part of that, probably at the top of that, like looking for people who can completely get rid of like bias is nearly impossible. It feels like, you know, there should be rotation. That I don't know why the top leagues wouldn't consider something like that. I would love to see something like that. I think I don't watch like world football as much as I have enough trouble keeping up with Wolves. My wife would probably prefer I do it a little less. So I'm wondering if there are like what leagues don't have this problem? What leagues, like who's the clear top league in terms of like refereeing?
Probably Saudi. No, but nobody watches. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to see it, did it really fall? You know,
there is that element of, though, when it's like the Euros or the World Cup, and then you can instinctively see those games that are better officiated. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sure it necessarily comes down to the country of origin of the official, but it's very rare that you'll get another game not involving a home nation, in England's case, that's reffed by one of the domestic refs from the Prem, and they get talked about in such glowing terms like that, it was expertly reffed, he's one of the best in the world. Never happens. So I think that's where you start to get a better idea that this high standard doesn't exist in England, but it's other parts of the world.
Well, Danny, Liverpool took a 2-0 lead on what was a soft pen, but probably by the letter of the law, a penalty.
Probably. It's a little bit naive from Jose Sa. He's either got to fully go for it and try to get the ball for it first, or he's got to pull out completely. Because I think Luis Diaz is 100% looking to go over there. And then we saw it in the second half, a very similar body shape happen with Jota in the second half, which we'll talk about. But it was very much kind of like a trailing leg scenario. I think we saw very similar, almost in the exact same place in the box, penalty given against Jose Sa against, I think, Spurs at home like a couple seasons ago. It just like was identical in some ways, but it's a penalty because he catches him. But Luis Diaz is definitely trying to make that happen. He almost even knocks the ball out of bounds well before he even hits the deck. So it's no question what he's trying to do, but Jose Sa still initiates that contact and kind of gives them a decision to go on. I do think that if it's like not called on the field, which would be almost impossible because Simon Hooper would have to be on the opposite side of them, then there's a chance that VAR doesn't overturn that decision. But yeah, fairly tenuous, and just we probably got what we deserved on that one because even apart from the officiating, which was not helping us, I think we were just a little bit lightweight in that first half.
Yeah, and things were not looking. I mean, nothing really went right. The officiating was awful. You give up a penalty, you're down 2-0. I think what I like about Vitor is he doesn't fuck around and wait on halftimes. I mean, how many times did we wish Gary O'Neill made some changes at halftime and he wouldn't? Well, this time, Paul, Vitor did, and he took out Sarabia and Guedes, who were just invisible, and brought on two difference makers.
Yeah, you spot on. I think it's it's a case of like being 2-0 down. He didn't see that the game was over, which was awesome, that there was still something that could be taken from it if everything went in our favor in the second half. And I think what's apparent is that he started to really extract a little extra from players that had previously been struggling. Like Bellegarde's the prime example. Is either coming into the team like the Villa game, having a really good match, scoring, or like yesterday, he's coming on. It's not his natural ideal position, but you can tell that his output's increased and he's got more confidence, and that's coming off, that's showing. That's that little flick that counts as an assist for Cunha's goal. That wasn't happening pre-Vitor. So it's those incremental differences that are starting to show, and then that is where you finally get to rely on a squad that he can look to his bench. He can see that I've potentially got some game changers here or some match winners, and he's not afraid to make those changes, which is great.
All right, Ray, now's your chance to gush about Vanuzzi.
I'm just getting really excited about him. I wasn't expecting. I don't know that any of us were like expecting him to play such an advanced role. When I heard we were signing him, it's just like because I know Vitor has been talking about we need more midfielders, and I'm just like, if we have anything, we have midfielders. So I wasn't quite on board with the vision, but seeing Marshall running out there and making a difference has kind of changed my tune, which is why I'm getting excited. Obviously, his finishing is not quite where we need it to be just yet, but he's getting in positions that are dangerous. People are finding him. And we haven't had a lot of that from the midfield. I can't think of a ton of players like from that position that have had like a similar profile since I've been watching. So I'm excited to see that different element. And I think anybody who can take some pressure off of Cunha and Larson when he gets back, I'm all on board with. So I just I love the intensity he's playing with, and he can move. So it's I'm feeling pretty pumped about that, even though we haven't quite seen the full results yet.
Danny, you know who else was super good about getting into scoring positions and then completely flubbing it in the final third. And this person was criticized for it all the time, yet we are praising Panuzzi.
Yes, are you talking about our sweet Belgian prince Leander?
Well, actually, I'm talking about Adama on that one.
Oh, okay.
But Dendoncker, I have never cussed at a Wolves player more than I did at Dendoncker. And Marshall's not there yet. But God, if he doesn't start hitting the back of the net, I may get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point, especially because I think that, unlike a lot of our recent signings, he's not that young. I believe he's 28. So it's not like you can sit there and say like, oh, he's missing these chances now, but in a couple of years, he'll really start hitting his stride. Like this has got to be his peak, so he does have to start having something to show for it. But it is interesting because, I've already seen some negativity towards Venezia on Twitter. And yet I think we have only like 90 minutes of actual time and play, maybe less. I can't remember if he came in at half against Blackburn. I think he came in later than that. So less than 90 minutes. So the data just isn't there yet. And he is getting into some very promising positions. Somewhat like Dendoncker, he arrives late in the box. I also think that the way that we play right now lends itself to creating chances from that kind of run in a way that it didn't with Dendoncker because we weren't really doing the things that we needed to do to get them to him. Not that he would have taken them even if we had, but yeah, I mean, he's just kind of got so much energy getting up and down the pitch, and having someone be that late arriving player in the box can be so valuable. And I'm really interested to see how Pereira uses him for the rest of the season. I could very well see him sort of being right on the edge of like a starting position where it's like he'll start sometimes where the scenario calls for it, and he will come off the bench other times because depending on the team that we're playing, we're going to have very different types of chances for him to use. And if we're not going to like be able to play on the break like that, then he might not be as useful. But yeah, I'd be very interested to see if he starts bearing those chances, especially if we play some lesser teams, although he had several against Blackburn that he didn't bury. So we'll just chalk that one up to being new.
I think the one yesterday, it's like the whole game, you've got to collectively be at a 9 or a 10 out of 10 performance to win at Anfield. And you only get a very minute set of chances to do that. And he had one of them, and his finish was that of a central midfielder, and not of a striker, where he tried to put his foot through it. And he's coming up against one of the best keepers in world football, one of the best keepers in the EPL, who's playing for the league leaders. So when you factor in all of that, again, if you give him that type of chance, and no disrespect to some of the teams that we're going to coming up against, probably score that against a Bournemouth or a Fulham. And it's one of those occasions. And the other element to all of this is, I know you've got a whole pattern of play, how it formed, but who was the defender that stopped him from a tap-in from Tommy Doyle's cross from the byline? And who did he replace? And it's funny how all of that comes into bearing on the result when you add all of those little incremental elements of a game. And that happens. So it's like the butterfly effect of all these things that happen. That could have been him putting the ball in the back of the net, icing on top of the cake, and coming back from 2-0 down to get a deserved 2-2 draw. So it's those fine margins that unfortunately we missed a little yesterday.
I genuinely saw at least one Liverpool channel give Gerald Kwanzaa their man of the match, despite the fact that he came on at halftime and it's basically just because of that one block. Absolutely couldn't write it to replace the player who should have been sent off.
I think maybe part of my problem with Manutse is it's taking away playing time from Tommy Doyle. And I really feel like he just gives the club a little extra thing. So I don't know. Hopefully he comes through, starts hitting some goals. I will gladly eat crow. I will, but I got Den Donker vibes, and that's not a great thing.
I hear that. In his defense, there have been a couple of strikers who have come through in my time watching Wolves who would have done very similar.
Oh, that's completely fair. Absolutely.
Yeah, is he Den Donker 2.0 or is he William Jose 2.0?
No, I think he's better than Jose, which is saying something. I hope so. Man, I forgot about that little 6 month.
Hey, that whole time was lost to history because like him and Jesus Vallejo, both people who were later vindicated at various levels. That was just an extremely dysfunctional team. And not
Vallejo, who started one match, and then that was all Nuno needed to see.
Not that they became world beaters, but they aren't nearly as bad as they looked in a Wolves shirt.
Well, there was another very interesting officiating thing, and that was Paul Jota earning a penalty. VAR actually ended up overturning that. And yet, somehow, no yellow card for Diogo Jota.
I think that goes into like the whole element of the professionalism of the officiating in the first place. Because if you've got your shit about you clocking onto that, and you're up there with play, you're watching it, you're seeing what's happening, and you're calling it on the field, and you're booking him in real time, because you can't retro that booking after it gets a VAR referral. And unfortunately, I used to love him in a Wolves jersey, but he's getting a really bad reputation for doing shit like that now. Jota is, and it's that one yesterday. And was it Newcastle earlier on this season when he did similar? It went past the keeper and he left his leg in to try and earn the penalty that way. So it's part of his MO, and it's that whole thing about these officials not recognizing or not being cognizant of it, that you've got these players that they're going to use every little dark art imaginable to try and get an advantage, and you're not up with it to try and stop it at source, which is my biggest issue out that whole decision, is that you should have your refereeing should be of a high enough standard that's cut out even without the need to have it reviewed. It should have been a booking for simulation right at the start.
The thing that I've heard, the explanation that's been given, and I don't know if this is just people speculating, but that VAR can't advise on yellow cards. But surely a referee can give a yellow card independent of a VAR decision. So like if the VAR decision comes down, no penalty, there was no contact, they're not advising on give him a yellow card or not. Surely Simon Hooper could then just decide to give him a yellow card.
Well, Neto had that happen a couple of years ago. He drew a pen and they overturned it and he got a yellow for simulation.
I just don't understand, and then if that's not the case, and this is another explanation I've heard, is that like, oh, well, there's a bit of contact, like, that's incidental, and so it's not quite a yellow. But it's like, no, the question is, did he dive or not? And the answer is yes, he dove, therefore it's not a penalty. Then how is it not a yellow anyway? It's that Jota getting a yellow or not is like the least of my concerns, especially during this passage of play, but throughout that entire game, I don't really care. It's just another annoyance.
Well, not an annoyance is watching Matheus Cunha every week. And Ray, what do you say about that goal that we haven't already said about Cunha's brilliance?
I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It was magical. I was talking to. I've got a Liverpool friend at work today, and he said that
Friend,
was
huh?
the best. I mean, I know people. Okay.
Yeah.
Associate, if you will. Anyway, he's like, that's the best goal anybody's scored against us all year, and I'm just like, it's just class. Like I it's special what he's doing, and I will be very sad when I can't root for it anymore in the very near future. But it's just, I'm so I'm yes, Todd, it will. I'm just glad. I'm glad we panic bought him when we did, because he is dragging us.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the thing when we did panic buy him. He showed promise, but I would have never thought he would be turning into this goal scoring savant, Paul.
He's got everything, it's right foot, left foot, creativity, picking the ball up deep, and being, again, like arguably the best player on the pitch across two teams, stat full of internationals. One team will probably win the league this season, and he's head and shoulders above everyone else. So it's gonna sting. I'm like looking down that Premier League table, like those top 4, top 6 teams, just praying that none of them find a spot for him, because if he's got to go, he's got to go. But I really don't. It'd be like Neves for me, rocking up in another team's jersey in the same league. I'd really struggle with it. So I hope is of that level that the big guns in Europe are taking a look at him and he goes elsewhere, because I could just see him doing that week in, week out for a top team. And I'd hate it if it was anyone else in that league apart from us.
Now you know how I feel about Adama, Paul.
Yeah.
Who was on the team of the week, I'm pretty sure. Well, 2-1 loss. That sucks. But the bigger concern is Agbadou's injury. And Danny, have you seen anything online? I know you were saying, well, he's walking around. Maybe it's not so bad. Vitor said it was a muscular thing at halftime. I don't know if then it flared up more when he went for that diving tackle. But we're holding our breath right now.
Yeah. I think the muscular comment is hopefully to assuage us that, it's not his knee or something, that it's not like an ACL or something, which I think is something we kind of already knew, maybe. But yeah, it was kind of interesting, pretty frustrating that apparently he mentioned that he had, some sort of niggle during halftime, but said that he could carry on. And then obviously that happens. And I think Vitor's statements were sort of like, these kids have to be honest with me, because like we need him. And like, honestly, apart from Cunha, there's probably not anyone else that it's more painful to lose at this moment. And that might be a little bit of overreaction. He hasn't been here.
I don't think
long.
It is. No,
And
I don't think
that,
it
like,
is at all.
Well, and I think that like Toadi's reintroduction has helped a lot in terms of defense as well. So it's not like, like we're ascribing all of this to him, but there's other people involved in making the team better in this moment. But that being said, like we've all seen what he's done this past month. So yeah, it would be a huge loss to lose him for any length of time. To me, this like his injury is like the only important headline from this game almost. I mean, that was partly born out of frustration for the refereeing for me, but like I just, I went into that game expecting a loss, and I was hoping maybe get a draw. So like I didn't particularly care losing 2-0 or 2-1, whatever, doesn't really matter. But losing Agbadou for anything more than a month, I think, could really hurt Wolves in the long term.
Yeah, I completely agree. Paul, what would be the solution if Agbadou's out for a month or longer.
A little to what Danny was saying, like now we've got Toty back, it just adds that balance, a little more solidity on the left-hand side, because you got to remember when he first came in, he was taking up that position, which he did well, but it's not his strongest being on the opposite side. I think where we find in his strength is being that brick shit house of a central defender in the middle of the three. So I'm confident that Toty's back. It won't be as bad as if Toty wasn't there. I thought it was interesting yesterday that Bueno got the nod in terms of like coming straight on, especially with Giga being on the bench as well. So if he's thought of as being that natural replacement in the center, it's probably better coverage there. But you're still missing that real dominating defender who'll get his head on everything first or be first to the ball like Agbadu was showing. But I think just like it's a miss. It's going to be a big miss. I think having him through the end of the season fully fit would have gone a tremendously long way to assuring our safety. But when you've got the likes of Doherty yesterday having a good game, and even when like Bueno came on, it wasn't like we were under pressure or the defense totally folded. They didn't even have a shot in the second half, I think.
Which was the first time in like a decade, I think. It was
so
crazy.
like the collective, I think I'm disappointed, obviously, but the collective of it, I'm not as distraught about the news like right now if he is out for a few weeks.
Well, Craig Dawson will not be replacing him in the lineup. We know that. Sad end for his Wolves career, isn't it?
It is. I mean, he obviously lost a step or two, and he was never fast to begin with. So it's not that I don't understand why he might not be, he might not be the profile that Vitor wants, but like, I don't know, he's got so much experience, and we seem to be, knocking on wood here, turning a corner in terms of our defensive solidity. Like putting some things together. I can't believe that there's not a place for him in the dressing room, and I don't know if he was the type of guy to like really pout, about his place. I would be kind of surprised at that if he were that sort of like negative influence, or could be that negative influence in the dressing room. But when Agba goes down, and we're throwing Santi Bueno in, who's had plenty of chances, and hasn't seized his place. It feels risky to leave any like defender of substance like out of the team completely.
Well, guys, let's look ahead. Couple big matches coming up. We have Bournemouth on Saturday. That game's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And then Tuesday, it's an afternoon game. Book those long lunches. 2:30 Eastern, 1:30 Central, against Fulham and our good friends Raul Jimenez and Adama Traore. Let's start with Bournemouth. Paul, this is the first of two times we're going to see Bournemouth in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and one of the informed teams in the whole league as well. So two tough games, but it's one of those like against that type of opponent on Saturday. It's like if we can show like we did at Anfield, I think we can give them a game. and I think we could come away from Saturday with at least a point. But collectively, it seems like seems like a week that if somehow we were able to win away on Saturday, win at home, and then get a passage through in the cup, it would be like we're effectively safe and on our way to a really good cup run. And it seems to me like if we're able to put that pivotal week together coming up, it could really shape how the rest of the season plays out. It could really put us on an upward trajectory.
But Danny, we always seem to have boring draws or 1-0 games against Bournemouth.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. They are so in form, and I look on that game with a lot of dread. But then I think back to the reverse fixture, and I mean, it was kind of a bloodbath, but also we gifted them 3 penalties. So, and I think that even without Agbadu, we're more defensively solid now than we were then. So if we don't gift them 3 penalties, hell, if we only gift them 1 penalty, I think we could still come away with a result potentially. Because I've been feeling, pretty confident, partly just I think in terms of Vitor's organization. I think, the games that we've lost, we have not looked as defensively chaotic as we did in that first half under Gary O'Neill. And so I'm hopeful that, we can go in there with like a decent game plan to try to keep it tight. Because honestly, any points from Bournemouth away, I will happily take, given the form that they're in right now.
Ray, which is the more important game against Bournemouth? Is it this tie or is it the cup tie in a couple weeks?
That's a good question. I mean, as much as I want us to have a really big cup run, if we get, I'm talking about 3 points. Like if we're talking about a draw here versus a win in the FA Cup, I'm going with the FA Cup. But I'm at the point in the season where I want the points, and I want us to capitalize on the second half of this game. So seeing us put 2 halves together and come away with a win, I think that would take us a long way toward what Paul was saying, securing that safety, because we have a pretty good run of fixtures in the short to medium term. We've got a March and April look not nearly as scary as they did in September. So, I can see why you would say the cup, or why someone would say the cup. I saw Todd's comment, but
I want to know what Paul would say.
Paul,
what do you take, the league match or the cup game?
Yeah, sadly, right now I'm taking the league game. If you give me 3 points on Saturday,
yep,
I'm taking them because I think momentum is important. I think it's really looking like it's us, Ipswich, and Leicester. So if it is those 3 teams, that point swing can be so crucial. If we're getting 3 points and they're not picking up any, suddenly though that gap starts to get a heck of a lot bigger. So it would be the case, I think, if we were to win on Saturday and we win against Fulham, I think it would only take probably not losing in those fixtures that we've got against those teams that are remaining to stay in the league. And I saw a thread on Molyneux Mix yesterday around the fixtures and the remaining games. And I think out of all of our remaining away games, there's only Man City and someone else in the top half. So you can really say there's only that Man City game where you probably say that you're going to give that as a you're gonna give that one up as likely a defeat. Everything else, we've got something
They're trash.
genuinely to play for. So
defensively, at least.
yeah. I as much as I'd be gutted about it, as much as a win in the cup potentially opens another trip to Wembley, I've got to take the 3 points on Saturday if I was given it.
I agree. Well, then on Tuesday, Danny, old friends, Raul Jimenez, Adama Traore come in. I mean, it's always scary when those two are coming in just because you don't want to be beat by guys that used to be beloved at Molineux.
Yeah. One of my minor obsessions is how much people seem to think that ex-players come back to haunt us, when I think, at least during my time supporting Wolves, which I recognize is mostly recent, it really hasn't been that bad. Everybody says like, oh, of course Jota's going to score against us. I think he scored against us once since he left. And kind of the same thing with Raul and Adama. Adama's definitely never scored against us. He looked a little dangerous last year at Molineux, but didn't score. It's just like I'm not worried, except in the sense that I know it'll hurt more if they do. But I don't know. Fulham are a really good team right now. I really like what Marco Silva does generally, but what he's done with the Fulham team, I think that they're starting to be a little bit more stretched in the back half of the season. So, they might not be quite as sharp as they were, but they still have every chance of coming to Molineux and getting a result. And I think that with this week of 3 games, 8 days with 3 games, one way you could look at it is that you go to Bournemouth, obviously full strength. There's no reason not to. You've had a whole week to train, and sort of set up to settle in and try to frustrate them and maybe get something on the counter. And then if you need to do rotation, you do that in the Fulham game because you only have 2 days of rest between. And again, you might be sitting in a bit because of the personnel that you have, and it might end up being kind of messy. And if that's the game that you end up sacrificing slightly, but you can get 3 points out of Bournemouth and progression in the cup, even though that seems like, beating Fulham is probably the easier task of the 3 games.
Yeah.
But, just in terms of the schedule that you have between them might favor the 2 Bournemouth games, even though they're away. So I don't know. It's also going to depend on the personnel that we have back. I mean, I think we're all expecting that Aguado is probably not going to feature in any of these 3 games, at the barest stretch, maybe the cup game. But even that, I think, is pretty unlikely. But the question about, is Strand Larson back? What does that do to our chances against any of those teams? I think, especially, against Fulham, being able to have Strand Larson up against their larger center backs, would help us a decent amount. And the word is that he's, not that far away. So I don't know, that could change things pretty drastically.
I'll be curious to see if it is time to get Jigba with it.
Could be.
All right, guys, let's look at the standings. Danny, no points this week, but you still got 26.
I got the score right, just not the teams.
Yeah. Alex, no points this week, but he's still at 17. And then look at this. It's unfortunate that I got it based on a Wolves loss. However, I am no longer at the bottom of the table. That distinction belongs to you, Paul. I have 13 points. You have 12. Quite the relegation battle we have going on right now.
That's right. One of us is getting relegated, I think.
Yeah, this would be a 3rd straight year for you, Paul. No pressure.
I'm just terrible at predictions.
A triple dip.
It'll be non-league pretty soon.
All right, Ray, you're the guest, so we're going to let you start first. We're going to do the Bournemouth match. What is your prediction?
Not going to build up dramatic tension. I think this one's I have 1-1 draw in my head.
1-1 draw. Danny?
the refereeing decisions aside, I see a kind of similar game as we played against Liverpool. So I'm going to go a 2-1 Bournemouth win.
Okay. Paul?
I'm going to keep that glass half full, and I'm going to go for a Wolves 1-0 win.
1-0 win. Wow. Okay. I thought I wrote down before this 1-1 draw. That seems fair. Ray thinks so. Todd thinks so. Yeah, I think it's kind of a Bournemouth game, I feel like. Except they're both a little better at scoring this year, so 1-1 seems about right. Now for the Fulham match, Ray.
I think we win this one. I think that one we win. I want to say 2-0. But I feel like it's going to be 2-1. I'm going with 2-0 because I said it first.
2-0 Wolves. Okay. Danny?
Yeah, I don't know why. This just feels very similar to the game at the end, near the end of last season, and I think we won that one 2-1. So I'm going to go with that 2-1 Wolves.
Okay. Paul?
It's got a few of those Villa vibes for me, that a decent team coming to Molineux, you'd be happy with anything but a loss. So I think based on that, I would generally take 4 points from these two games as being a really solid return. So I've took the 3 away. I'll take the 1 at home, and I'll say 2-2.
I think it's going to be exciting. I think it is going to be squeezy bum-o-meter high. I think Wolves jump out 2-0. Here come Fulham roaring back with, of course, an Adama to Raul to tie it up, a 2-2. And then Wolves get a penalty for the first time this season. And Cunha knocks it through with 3 minutes left in stoppage time. Wolves win 3-2.
Wow.
I will gladly accept that.
Mm-hmm.
No Stupid Questions is brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. Whether you're toasting some Vino de Vitor or winding down after a day of work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of wine country with each sip. Now at esfuerzowines.com, you can use the promo code VITOR, that's VITOR, at checkout to receive a 30% discount off your order. And don't forget to try the special edition 1-pack wines to show your passion and support for Wolves with each glass. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their product responsibly and in moderation.
It is the favorite part of the show because it is 100% listener involvement. It is no stupid questions, and you can send your no stupid questions through every week by email hello@wholelotofwolves.com or on X at WLW pod, or if you are live with us on the stream, you can send them in as a comment as well. And we've got one to kick us off this week. And it is it's 2 things that have just been mentioned in pretty recent on the show. It is Drew in Pittsburgh on X, and he's asking, what happens first? Wolves get a penalty or Menezes scores a goal? Let me go, Danny, on this one.
If we're just going based purely on prediction, I say Menezes scores a goal. But I want to hear what everyone else has to say, and then I have a little almost mini quiz for you guys.
Well, I think I just said what I think it's.
Yeah, so Josh thinks there's going to be a penalty for Cunha in a few days' time.
I definitely think Menezes scoring first. I think he's scoring in this week.
Todd in the chat with the real checkmate. Menezes scores a penalty.
If he lines up at the spot, I may not be alive to see it go through.
Can you head in a penalty?
Yeah.
Man, that thing's going so far into the stands.
That'd be
think,
worse
Paul?
than that one time where Huang ended up shooting that penalty in
Oh
the
my God, don't
game
remind
they
me
were
about
trying
that.
to build his
Okay.
confidence.
What do you think, Paul?
I probably we're so anti the officials at the moment that we're probably not even getting a sniff of a penalty off anyone, and so purely based on that, I think it's a Menezes goal. And I think actually, like, talking about line up and resting players and having that squad depth, I'll probably see him maybe start in that Fulham game, in that they're going to need a little something different, potentially in the midfield at home. And then that probably goes to trying to strike that balance in that if he's starting and we're resting one of Andre or Joe, who it is. So I'd really like the look potentially of Joe Gomez and Menezes central midfield partnership, but they're going to have to be pretty disciplined in making up that defensive solidity at the same time.
Yeah. All right. So little pop quiz time. I shout out to on X. This user is Seagz, Seagz. So if there's anything factually wrong about this, then you take it up with them, because I haven't bothered to fact check any of this. But The Athletic put out a tweet saying that Mohamed Salah has taken 50 penalties for Liverpool. His 50th, of course, came in the game against us, and he scored 42 of them. So Wolves famously have 0 penalties awarded to them this season. We are one of only like 5 or 6 teams in the top 4 leagues in England that have not been awarded a penalty all season. And of course, the only one in the Premier League. Last season, we had 4 penalties awarded to us, and the previous season we had 3. So question 1 is, how far back, so what season would you have to go to get our 50th most recent penalty?
Is it in all competitions or just the EPL?
That's a good question. I don't know, because he didn't say. I'm going to guess league.
I'm going to say like 2004.
Anyone else?
I
Closest
have
gets
no
it.
idea, man. Like it's maybe 2010. I don't know.
Paul?
I've got generally no clue. 2004 to, I'll go in the middle. 2008.
It really went in the 1990s.
Ray was the closest. So it was the 2010-2011 season. The second penalty of that season was 50 penalties ago for Wolves. And for the bonus points, and probably only Paul is going to get this one, who do you think scored that penalty? And I will tell you that it was in a match that ended 3-3 against Spurs on March 6th, 2011.
I see the wheels. Wheels turning.
Shit.
I'm welcome to give it that if he wants.
Not even gonna.
Stephen Fletcher.
You are incorrect. Minnesota Todd has it. It is Kevin Doyle.
Wow.
He scored 2 penalties in that game, in fact.
2 penalties.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
What?
No, wait. No, this is just written weird. Okay, he scored and then scored a penalty, but they listed it in a very similar style. So he scored his second goal as a penalty, and that was 50 penalties ago for Wolves. So if you're looking,
Chelsea, right?
Yeah. So if you're looking for a penalty to be scored first over Marshall Menezes, I think he has the slight edge despite his profligacy.
Hey, it's gotta happen sometime.
It's
like roulette. It's like roulette when you sit there watching, and it's like, it's hit black 12 times in a row. It's gotta hit red. Got it.
The question is, what shirt is Cunha wearing the next time he takes a penalty?
Purple.
I meant Wolves or some other shirt.
Oh.
You're depressing me.
I think now we're just manifesting itself that if they happen to be in that third kit on Saturday, we're getting a penalty and it's Cunha.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Or against Fulham. I would definitely take that. I should get like 3 extra bonus points for that.
Making the rules up as you go along.
Yep. Well, I mean, I'm just like an EPL official. I just make shit up as I go.
And that was No Stupid Questions for this week, brought to you by our friends at Espresso Wines. So head to espressowines.com and use that coupon code VITOR, VITOR, at checkout to get your 30% off the order.
All right, Ray, how can people get a hold of you if they want to talk more Wolves? Much to your wife's chagrin.
Yeah. All right. So in person, if you're in Minnesota, come to Black Heart of St. Paul. Watch with Minnesota Wolves. Our Instagram is MN_WWFC. We're also on Blue Sky. That's MN-WWFC. If you want to talk to me specifically, I've got a Twitter account for a podcast that I do called sports_kinda, KINDA.
Awesome.
And if you go to the Blackheart, they will make you drink Malort.
If you come to Blackheart, you'll drink Malort with us.
And I have one more question, Ray. Are you XXX sexy sexual that hacked Todd's Twitter account?
Absolutely not.
Do you know who would say that? Somebody that had hacked that account.
You backed me into a corner here, man. There's nothing I could say.
And that brings this week's show to an end. Thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex producing in New York, you, the listener, across our podcast channels, or the streamer on YouTube. If you are new to our YouTube channel, please head on over there, subscribe to our content, give it a like and a thumbs up and all of that good stuff, because it helps so much with our exposure and helping promote a whole lot of Wolves across America and the whole of the world. So we're going to be back next Tuesday nighttime in America. That will be for a review of that Fulham game straight after. We'll cover everything that goes on as well from that Bournemouth game on Saturday also. So if you meet a new friend this week, if it's Simon Hooper, don't say anything, as he will book you. But for everyone else, tell them up the mighty Wolves.
It's a whole lot of